Welcome to the Chronicles of a Cheating Wife channel. A new story every day. Don't forget to subscribe. She leaned toward me that morning in the hallway, pressed her lips against mine, and pulled away so quickly that I wasn't even sure she'd intended to kiss me at all. It was an automatic motion, the kind you give to an acquaintance on a busy street. Impersonal, hollow. The kind of kiss you give when you're not really thinking about the person in front of you. Her eyes drifted over my shoulder, like she was already focused on something behind me, something more urgent than her husband. I stood there, half-dressed for work, holding my briefcase in one hand and staring at her as she hurried past me in the corridor. 1 year ago, that fleeting kiss would have carried warmth, would have lingered on my lips. Now it was an afterthought. And I found myself rooted to the spot, my heart pounding with an uneasy clarity. Her casual, indifferent peck felt like a verdict on everything we'd shared. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Stress, work, the baby. Marriage changes after a child, and that's normal. But a second voice, quieter yet persistent, whispered that something else was going on. Her eyes hadn't quite met mine all week, and her phone was always in her hand or tucked against her side. Locked, face down. A dull blade of suspicion nicked at my thoughts. I tried to press it down, didn't want to let it fester. But the scratch of it was there, throbbing, insistent. I grabbed my car keys and forced myself to follow her into the kitchen. She was checking her phone, the screen flashing a name I recognized. Ryan. Coach Ryan. The same man who used to train her at the gym. The same man whose Instagram posts I had seen once, featuring glistening muscles and motivational quotes. She hadn't gone to the gym in at least 2 months, though. So why was he on her phone at 7 in the morning? She glanced up and saw me. Her hand jerked in reflex, flipping the phone face down on the counter. Her expression stayed neutral, too neutral, like a carefully curated mask. In that moment, I heard my own voice in my head, calm and oddly distant. "This is bigger than you want it to be. Everything okay?" I asked, my words scraping out awkwardly. I'd wanted to sound casual, but I could hear the tension coiling. "Yeah," she said, maybe too quickly. Then she attempted a smile. "Just a text about some workout advice." "Ah," I nodded. "You planning to go back to the gym?" She shrugged, glancing at the mug in front of her. She was stirring coffee, but not really paying attention, letting the spoon clang against the ceramic as if she was releasing nervous energy. "We'll see." She kept stirring. I kept nodding. We both pretended this was normal, that we'd always had these distant, half-hearted conversations. But my gut told me that everything was about to collapse if I pushed even an inch too far. I left for work that day with a heaviness in my chest that wouldn't go away. The entire drive, I replayed her expression, that phone call with Ryan's name on the screen, and the fleeting, mechanical kiss. It all added up in some black math of betrayal. At work, tasks piled up. Phone rang. Emails buzzed. I tried to bury myself in brand strategies and campaign proposals, in focusing on each upcoming deadline. But it felt like a cheap bandage on a deep wound. By lunchtime, I caught myself imagining how she might be meeting him somewhere, or texting him a smiley face or those whispered words that used to be mine alone. Jealousy is a beast. It gnaws at reason, leaving behind raw suspicion and a simmering bitterness. That evening, I arrived home early. I went upstairs and found my wife in the bedroom, door half open. I paused. She was on the phone, speaking softly. About what, I didn't know, but her tone was intimate, coaxing. I took a step forward, and the floorboard creaked. She turned sharply, saw me in the reflection of the mirror. She ended the call. "You scared me," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes flickered to the phone in her hand. "Sorry," I muttered. "Didn't mean to." She laid the phone face down on the dresser. The tension was there, coiled like a snake waiting to strike. I fumbled with my tie, trying to look like I had a reason for coming up besides eavesdropping. She walked past me, not quite meeting my gaze. That was enough. I didn't even have to ask what she'd been talking about. Her body language gave it away. Downstairs, our son was sitting in his high chair. He had just turned 1. That morning, I tried to remind her that we should plan something special. Maybe not a big party, but at least an evening at home with a cake, a few photos, that typical milestone. But she brushed it off. "It's no big deal," she'd said, rummaging for her phone. And that's when I saw Ryan's name again. That's when I noticed a faint whiff of cologne on her sweatshirt, not mine. Sometimes it's the little things that break you. It's not always the grand confession or the big confrontation. Often, it's the quiet dismissals and the sense that your partner is miles away, unreachable, even though you're standing right there. That night, I barely slept. I got up twice to check on our son, and each time I'd pass our bedroom, see her sleeping on the far side of the bed, phone on the nightstand with the screen face down. The damn phone, always hidden. I stood in the doorway, imagining a scenario where I grabbed it and looked. But something in me recoiled from that idea. Maybe fear of confirmation, or maybe a shred of pride that told me I shouldn't stoop to that. So I turned away and went to the bathroom instead. I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My reflection stared back, exhausted, older than I remembered. Without thinking, I pressed my lips to the glass. It was cold. A bizarre gesture, but it felt like some last flicker of intimacy in a marriage that was slipping through my fingers. I kissed my own reflection, because kissing her was a lie now. I never knew who she was, or what she thought about when she closed her eyes. The next morning, I noticed the tension lines on my forehead that hadn't been there a year ago. The stress had become a permanent resident on my face. She barely said goodbye before heading out, claiming she needed fresh air. Didn't say where she was going. And I didn't ask. I was too numb to ask. Days passed. I let the suspicion coil around me like barbed wire. Sometimes I'd try to confront her, to speak plainly. "Is something wrong?" Or "You've been distant, talk to me." But she'd laugh it off or get angry. "You're making things up," she'd say. "You're being paranoid. You're stressed. You're the one who's changed." And maybe I had changed, because all that bitterness and jealousy was turning me into something I didn't recognize. One afternoon, I worked from home. She'd gone out, presumably to pick up groceries. Hours went by. I decided to drive around and see if maybe she'd stopped somewhere. My heart hammered with the knowledge I was doing something desperate and pathetic, but it was too late to stop. I cruised past the gym. I spotted her car parked near the side entrance, next to a sleek silver SUV. I pulled over and stared through the windshield. Part of me wanted to storm in, confront them, demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I waited. After half an hour, I saw them come out together, her and Ryan. He was taller than me, broader in the shoulders, wearing athletic gear that emphasized his physique. She stood close to him, face flushed in that way I used to see when we first started dating. Then she leaned toward him, and the image sliced through me. The way her body angled into his, the way his arms slid around her waist, it was unmistakable. The raw charge between them made my skin crawl. She noticed me in the car. I saw her freeze, her eyes widening. Ryan stepped back, his expression shifting from confidence to alarm. For a moment, none of us moved. Then she hurried over, face pale, while he hung back. "What are you doing?" she blurted, voice shaking with adrenaline. She tried to sound outrage, but I heard the guilt. "Me?" I said quietly. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel. "I was about to ask you the same thing." She looked over her shoulder at Ryan. He stood there, arms crossed, like he couldn't decide if he should come protect her, or if it was safer to let her handle me. I recognized that posture from my own primal instincts, a male animal, ready to fight if needed. I realized my teeth were clenched so hard my jaw ached. She inhaled sharply, forcing a laugh. "I told you I might come to the gym. You're acting insane." "Don't lie," I said, voice deathly calm, though inside I was a hurricane of fury and pain. "I saw how you looked at each other." She froze. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with fear or maybe frustration at being caught. A moment later, she spun on her heel, marched back toward Ryan, and I saw them exchange some hushed words. Then she whirled around and said, "Just go home. We'll talk about this later." I felt the surge of anger up my spine. "When?" I bit out. "After your next date." She looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time in weeks, and there was pity in her gaze. Pity and something else, a hardness, like she had already made her choice, and it wasn't me. I drove off. My fingers drummed the steering wheel so violently they left marks. When I got home, I went straight to the bathroom and turned on the tap, letting cold water run over my hands as I stared into the mirror. Anger burned in me, but beneath it was a nauseating heartbreak. My entire life had become some perverse sideshow I couldn't control. Our son was with a neighbor that afternoon. I'd asked our neighbor to watch him for a couple of hours. Part of me felt grateful our boy wouldn't witness his father unraveling in real time. An hour later, she came home. I heard the front door slam, the crisp click of her heels on the floor. I stepped into the hallway, crossing my arms. She looked at me, eyes puffy from tears or maybe from fury. "We can talk," she said, voice tight, "but I'm not doing this with you screaming at me." "Fine," I replied. My voice was still calm, though inside I was frantic. "Explain." She tossed her hair back, crossing her own arms. "We've been off for a while. You know that. Ryan's just a friend. He listens to me. He understands the pressure I'm under." "Pressure," I repeated, baffled. "From what?" "Raising our son. Being married to me." She huffed. "Stop twisting my words." I took a step closer, hands trembling at my sides. "Look me in the eye and tell me the truth. Are you sleeping with him?" Her silence spoke volumes. She didn't have to say a word. Her gaze flicked away, and the space between us was thick with everything she wasn't saying. "Answer me," I demanded. My voice rose then, losing that eerie composure. She swallowed hard. "I needed to feel alive," she whispered finally, looking at the floor. "You've been distant. We lost our spark." I felt my throat constrict. Memories bombarded me. Our wedding day, her laughter in the sunlight, our honeymoon on a cheap but beautiful beach, the day she told me she was pregnant. All of it, now overshadowed by this betrayal. "So you chose him," I said. The words tasted like venom. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't finished. "You're telling me this is because of my distance, my stress at work, taking care of the bills, the mortgage, the groceries, trying to give you and our son a home. That's the reason you ran into his bed." She glared at me, tears brimming in her eyes. "You never asked how I was feeling. You shut down, always working. I reached out, you pulled away." A twisted laugh escaped my lips. "So that justifies meeting him in secret, lying to me, ignoring our son's birthday, to text your muscle-bound trainer about God knows what." I stepped back, realizing my fists had clenched, nails digging into my palms. "Wow, this is lower than I thought." She flinched. Then her expression hardened. "You want the full truth? Fine. Ryan makes me feel wanted. He's strong, he's there for me. I lost trust in you a long time ago. You were never around. You're obsessed with your job. You gave up on making me feel special. So yes, I went to him. If that makes me a monster in your eyes, so be it." My mind whirled. A storm of contradictory emotions battered me. Guilt, anger, heartbreak, self-loathing. Maybe I had neglected her. Maybe I did fail as a husband in ways I wasn't even aware of. But that didn't excuse the weeks or months of secrecy. The phone calls, the texts, the smell of another man's cologne on her. I felt the corners of my vision blurring. "You have no idea how badly you've hurt me," I said quietly. "How badly you've hurt this family." Her lip curled. "Look at you, playing the victim, like you had no part in driving me away." My breath came shallow. I realized we were both trembling in that hallway, her with righteous anger, me with wounded fury. She turned, as if to leave the conversation, but I grabbed her wrist, gently but firmly. "We're not done." She shot me a startled look. "Let go." I released her hand. "Is this it then? Did you want me to find out? Are you leaving me?" She closed her eyes. "I don't know what I want. Maybe I want you to care enough to fight for me. Or maybe I'm tired, and I just want out." A cold, bitter laugh escaped me. "Fight for you. After you've spent who knows how long in his bed. This is how you test me. You throw away our marriage for some fling and expect me to." "Stop," she snapped, voice raw. "I can't do this with you." She bolted up the stairs, leaving me alone with the weight of her words. I stood there, chest heaving, not sure what to do next. Part of me wanted to chase after her, to lock ourselves in a room and thrash it out until we reached either reconciliation or a final end. But I didn't move. My pride kept me rooted in place. That night, she slept in the guest room. I spent hours lying awake, imagining them together, her body pressed against his at the gym, the arch of her back, the flush of her skin. My own mind tortured me with images that made me want to claw out of my own skull. The baby cried in the middle of the night. I went to him, cradled him against my chest, pacing the dark living room. He drifted back to sleep, but my heart stayed wide awake. That's when I realized our life as I knew it was over. The following days were a blur of tension. We avoided each other, speaking only about the baby or the bills. She kept working on her freelance projects, tapping away at her laptop in the living room, while I tried to bury myself in marketing campaigns upstairs. And in between, my mind kept spiraling around that same question. How do we even begin to fix this? Or do we? She wore her wedding ring out of habit, or so it seemed. I wore mine out of stubbornness. Neither of us acknowledged that maybe the rings no longer meant anything. At one point, I tried to talk to her. "We should figure out what to do next," I said quietly, late one night when she came down to the kitchen for water. "This can't go on." She looked at me over the rim of her glass. There was a heavy sadness in her eyes. "I know," she said, "but I'm so tired. I can't even think straight. You still seeing him?" I forced myself to ask. She let out a shaky breath. "Not tonight. I'm here." She left the kitchen, leaving her words echoing in my head. "I'm here." But was she? Spiritually, emotionally, she was miles away. That night, I ended up in the bathroom again, staring at myself in the mirror. I pressed my palm to the cool surface and almost felt relief. Better the mirror than the false hope of her arms. The next morning, I found a text from my mother, asking about the baby's first birthday, wanting to see pictures. I never responded. How could I? The cheerful hallmark of a first birthday seemed like an insult in the midst of this war zone we called our marriage. One Saturday afternoon, I went out for a drive, ended up at the gym where she used to train. I told myself it was unintentional, but some part of me needed to see if Ryan was there, needed to see if they were together. The parking lot was nearly empty, so I went in. Loud music pounded from the speakers, and the smell of sweat and metal assaulted me. I found Ryan at the far side, demonstrating a weightlifting exercise to a small group. He saw me the same moment I saw him. Our eyes locked, and the tension was electric. I could practically feel my fists itching. He murmured something to his group and came over. "Hey man, look, this is not a good place to talk." "No," I said. "Probably not." He studied me, arms crossed, sweat glistening on his temples. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." We started talking. One thing led to. My voice turned cold. "Shut your mouth. Don't give me the story. She's my wife. Or she was." He pressed his lips together, glancing around at the onlookers. "Look, I get it. I've been in your shoes before. It's never easy." I cut him off again, stepping closer. "Don't patronize me." He exhaled, controlling his temper, though I could see the flicker of aggression beneath his eyes. In that moment, I wanted him to swing at me so I have a reason to hit back. But he didn't. He just said quietly, "I know you think I stole her. But maybe you lost her." I almost lunged at him right then, but a part of me realized we were in public, half a dozen people watching. Instead, I whispered a curse and turned on my heel, storming out. My hands trembled so badly that I could barely fit the keys into the ignition. I sat in my car, head resting on the steering wheel, thinking about how I used to kiss her on lazy Sunday mornings, how we laughed about silly TV shows, how we dreamed about raising a happy child. And now it was all broken. Thanks to him. Thanks to me. Thanks to all the friction we never resolved. I drove home, battered by the weight of my own failures and that scorching betrayal. She was in the living room when I walked in, seated at her laptop. She glanced at me, and something about my expression must have terrified her. "You went there?" she asked softly. I nodded, voice hollow. "Yeah." She closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I don't know how to fix any of this." For once, I didn't raise my voice. I just stared at her, seeing the woman I'd married. The same face, but now so distant. "I'm not sure I want to fix it," I said, surprising myself with my own words. Then I turned and headed upstairs. Behind me, I heard her sniffle, but she didn't follow, didn't try to change my mind. In the days that followed, the silence between us thickened like a bruise. She rarely spent nights at home anymore, claiming she needed space. Sometimes she came back before dawn. Sometimes I heard the front door open at 2 a.m., followed by her hushed footsteps creeping up the stairs. We slept in separate rooms, and in those lonely hours, something inside me hardened. The heartbreak remained, but a new resolve was forming. A cold determination to end this farce on my own terms. I threw myself into my job. My boss commented that I seemed more focused, though I was sure my face looked drawn and battered. My colleagues tiptoed around me, sensing the tension I carried like a loaded gun. Every moment at my desk was an escape from the nightmare at home. But I knew I couldn't live in denial forever. Finally, I took a Saturday and packed up my personal belongings, old photos, clothes, the watch my father gave me. Then I sat at the dining table, tapping my pen against the wood, forcing myself to write a letter. The words came slowly, but once they started, they poured out in a raw cascade. "If you find this, I'm gone. I tried to be the man you needed. I failed you. Maybe you failed me too. But I can't live in this lie anymore. I'm leaving you the sun, the house, everything we bought together. The only thing I'm taking is myself. What's left of me? Because the man I was before died in this marriage, and the one who remains refuses to let you finish the job. If you're reading this, know that I loved you once. But I love myself enough not to stay." I didn't sign it. I folded the paper, slipped it into an envelope, and left it tucked beneath the mug she used every morning for her coffee. I felt an odd sense of calm as I walked around the house, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Our baby was at my sister's place for the weekend. Thank God, because I couldn't bear to look into his eyes while I did this. I didn't even take him. And maybe that will haunt me. But I'm in no shape to be the father he deserves, not right now. He needs a stable environment, at least more stable than this. My wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, can blame me if she wants. I just know I have to run. When I heard the front door open, I tensed. She walked in, her hair a mess, her cheeks flushed, carrying her phone in her hand. I saw Ryan's name flicker on the lock screen for a split second before she hurried to turn it off. Our eyes met. She placed the phone on the counter, as if to hide it behind her purse. I saw the guilt, the shame, maybe a hint of relief. "You're back," she said, obviously noticing the duffel bags in the hallway. The fear in her voice was like a cold wind. "I'm leaving." My voice was steady, as though all my anger had burned itself out. She stared at me, those dark eyes that used to fill my world. "What? Are you serious?" I nodded. "Dead serious. I can't do this anymore. Her gaze flicked over the half-packed boxes, the sealed envelope near her mug, my jacket draped over the banister. I expected some explosion of emotion, a torrent of pleas or accusations. Instead, she sank against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor. She wrapped her arms around her knees, breathing unevenly. I wanted to hate her in that moment, but what I felt was more complicated: anger, sorrow, a tinge of pity, and an overwhelming exhaustion. "It's better this way," I said softly, feeling the words rattle around in my chest. "For both of us." She lifted her gaze to mine. What about the baby?" I swallowed hard. "He's with my sister right now. I'll still be in his life, you know that. But I can't stay in this house." She looked like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. Finally, she just nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I bent down and picked up my bag, ignoring the ache in my heart. As I moved to the door, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I paused. I thought about turning around, crossing the room, maybe holding her one last time. But that part of me was done. I let out a hollow breath. Me too. I stepped outside, shutting the door gently behind me. The sky was overcast, a faint drizzle misting the driveway. I loaded my bags into the trunk, started the car, and drove away without looking back. I got an apartment across town, a small place with plain white walls and carpets that smelled of new paint. I took only the essentials: my laptop, some clothes, a worn copy of my favorite detective novel, and a crumpled photograph of my son. The next few days blurred into each other as I tried to adjust to my new reality. No more daily phone checks to see if my wife was lying. No more tension-laced dinners. No more empty kisses. It was a relief, but also a gaping hole in my life. Sometimes I sat on the floor of the living room, leaning against the bare wall, just breathing. I'd feel the echoes of the past stirring inside me. Her laughter, the baby's first cry, the ring of my phone in the early days of our courtship when we talked for hours. Now, the silence was deafening. But in that silence, I found a strange peace, like I could finally hear my own heartbeat again. A few days later, I got a text from her. "We need to talk about our son's schedule." Another from Ryan. "I know this is awkward, but I want to talk." I ignored both. I wasn't ready. Let them wait. I spent my evenings alone, rereading old detective novels, searching for used furniture. The emptiness of the apartment felt clean, like a blank slate. I never told my colleagues about the real reason for the separation, only that I moved out and was living on my own now. Some of them probably guessed. My boss offered me some time off, but I declined. Work was the only place where I felt a semblance of normalcy. The hours I spent drafting campaigns, reviewing proposals, and meeting clients helped me forget the chaos in my personal life. One night, I found myself tapping out a long email to my parents, explaining that I needed space, that the marriage was over, that I still loved them. I didn't send it. Couldn't bring myself to see those words in their inbox. Instead, I scribbled down notes for a letter by hand, then tore it up. Maybe, eventually, I'd be able to face them, but not now. Another night, I stared at the ring on my finger for a long time, then finally tugged it off. A pale indentation remained on my skin, the ghost of a promise. I shoved the ring into a drawer. My phone chimed. It was her again. This time, I mustered the courage to read the message. "I found your letter. I'm sorry for everything. I do care about you. Please, let's talk." Something about her words ignited a surge of anger and sadness. She was sorry now. Where was that sorry when I was begging her to be honest? But the wave of rage dissipated as quickly as it came. I typed back, "I don't want to talk. I wish you the best. Let's keep this about the baby." She responded with a flurry of texts, urging me to come to the house, to work things out, or at least to give her closure. I set my phone face down, ironically mirroring her old habit. I couldn't read more. That was the night I truly felt I'd turned a corner. She no longer had the power to drag me into an argument I didn't want to have. She no longer had the power to define my worth. For the next few weeks, I visited my sister and my son every weekend. I held him in my arms, marveling at how quickly he was growing. It hurt like hell to know I wasn't tucking him in every night, hearing his babbles at dawn. But I had to believe that leaving was better than subjecting him to a home soaked in resentment and lies. One Saturday, I finally agreed to meet her at a neutral location, an outdoor cafe near the waterfront. My sister watched the baby while I drove there, bracing myself. She arrived looking exhausted, hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a simple sweater and jeans. We sat at a small table by the water. The smell of salt and coffee floated on the breeze. She started by apologizing, tears welling in her eyes. She tried to explain how she felt neglected, how she craved a connection she thought I'd stopped giving her. Ryan was an escape, someone who made her feel vibrant. She insisted it wasn't just sex, it was feeling wanted. I listened, not interrupting. Then I told her how humiliating it was to smell another man on her, how her phone became a symbol of everything that was rotten in our marriage. I confessed that I tried to hold on to my pride instead of fighting for her. And maybe if I had fought, we could have salvaged something. But I also said I didn't regret leaving, because the damage was too deep, and I couldn't live with that kind of betrayal. We spoke for nearly 2 hours, our words raw and messy, but at least we kept our voices low. People passed by with strollers and bicycles, oblivious to the war stories we were exchanging at that tiny cafe table. By the end, she asked if I could ever forgive her. I said I didn't know if forgiveness was the right word, but I didn't hate her anymore. I just felt done. She nodded, wiping tears. We agreed to handle custody amicably, to keep the lawyers out of it if possible, to share time with our son. Then we parted ways without hugging, without a final word of love or regret. I walked away feeling battered but strangely lighter. Maybe closure is just a fancy word for the point at which you decide to move forward, even if the scars remain. In the weeks that followed, I slowly built a new life. I started going for morning runs, something I hadn't done in years. I joined a local group of guys who play basketball on Sundays. My nights were no longer consumed with dread. I turned off my phone whenever I wanted. I even discovered an old hobby, playing guitar. I'd sit in my barely furnished living room and strum chords, letting the music fill the silence. One evening, I felt an overwhelming urge to write again, to let my feelings spill out. But instead of addressing a letter to her, I addressed it to myself. I recounted everything: my heartbreak, my sense of betrayal, the fury, the emptiness, and the faint hope that maybe this pain would forge me into a stronger person. I realized, as I wrote, that I was already changing. The version of me who once needed her approval, her validation, that man was gone. The new me was standing on his own 2 feet, determined not to lose himself again. A month later, I got a text from Ryan. This time, I didn't ignore it. He wrote, "I'm sorry if I disrespected you. I never meant to cause you pain. She's not with me anymore, if that matters. I hope you find peace." I stared at the message and felt nothing. No rage, no satisfaction, just a mild indifference. I deleted it without responding. Life settled into a manageable rhythm. I'd pick up my son on Fridays, spend the weekend with him in my sparsely decorated apartment, fill the living room with his toys, read him stories at night. Then on Sunday evening, I'd drive him back to the house. Each time, I saw the vacant look in her eyes. Sometimes she'd ask about my life, but not often. We kept it polite, kept the cracks in our hearts covered. There was a day I arrived to drop off our son, found the house uncharacteristically quiet. She was in the living room, sitting on the floor, the same place where I'd once confessed my love for her. She gave me a sad smile. "You look well," she said, voice soft. I nodded, kneeling down to let our son toddle across the floor. He laughed, banging a toy car into the coffee table. "I feel okay." She watched me, eyes tinged with regret. I'm glad. For the first time, I didn't feel the pang of old wounds. I felt acceptance. This was the new normal. I scooped our son into my arms, gave him a kiss, then handed him to her. She held him, pressing her face to his soft hair. Our gazes met. No words were spoken, but a mutual understanding passed between us. I left, drove back to my apartment, tossed my keys on the counter. I sank to the carpet in the empty living room, leaning against a wall. And I smiled. Not a bitter twist of the lips, but a genuine, calm smile. Because in losing her, I'd found something else. The will to live on my own terms. The resolve not to let betrayal define me. The knowledge that the mirror I used to kiss in desperation was no longer needed. I was finally comfortable in my own skin, strong enough to start over. I closed my eyes, letting the silence wash over me. No illusions, no false hopes, just a man who walked through betrayal and survived. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I took a deep breath that didn't hurt. That's when I knew I'd made it out of the darkest storm. I might be battered, but I was unbroken, and that was enough.